and they get to show their fancy socks. We unfortunately don't have David Potter in person today, and I hope we can all see him on the Zoom. There he is next to Sheri. Hi, David.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Much better today.
He is recovering from COVID.
Did he get it at the party?
No, he did not get it at his party. In fact, he was not at his own installation because he had COVID. So he was on a big screen at our party for him Friday night.
I was very excited to go, but my E&O insurance would have probably gone up after that if I infected everyone at the party.
Yeah, good idea. Well, we saw you nonetheless, so thank you. Again, you guys, we are really excited. I'm glad you're all here to hear all the wonderful things that we are going to hear from these wonderful, high-performing brokers. And I will tell you, we recently had a YPN event here for top producers. And I will say this could be considered a top producer discussion as well. So keep that in mind. I'm really excited to hear from all three of these very qualified and experienced brokers behind me. So first off, I want to introduce Sheri Messerlian. I'm saying your name correctly,
Yes.
right? Yes. Sheri. So Sheri is a member of NAI Capital, and since she joined NAI Capital in 1988, she has been a top producing broker and is currently in the Elite Diamond Club. She is based in the South Bay office. She's recognized by her peers and her clients as one of the leading commercial real estate brokers in the area. She's the past recipient of top producer awards at Matlow Kennedy Corporation, Merrill Lynch, Realty, and recently she was bestowed the honorific title of Queen of Hawthorne Boulevard. So, not sure if you have, by the city of Torrance, yes. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, numerous awards she's received. One just recently was the LA Business Journal award she received was the gold medal in top medical sales category for 2023. So another recent award that she received. Now, and so she is a leading retail commercial broker. Thank you, Sheri, for joining us today. We're all excited to hear from you. I am going to have David? Yeah, David Potter, can you go ahead and introduce David Holstein?
Sure. I'd be happy to do that. I actually have known Tony and David for quite some time. Sheri, I only met on the phone. I'm disappointed I didn't get to meet you in person, but I'm sure I will at one point in time. But David Holstein's background, he has 25 years of commercial and investment real estate sales with a primary focus on multifamily sales. He's an owner and operator of 200 plus units in the South Bay. He can tell you some pretty interesting stories, especially over the last couple of years with eviction moratorium and crazy government rent control. But we'll save that for another commercial series. He's a provider of secondary finance for non-owner occupied investment properties. And he's a survivor of 10 years with Marcus and Millichap. That's pretty impressive. And was at Remax Commercial for a minute. And now, most importantly, he is his own broker at the Holstein Group. David has an incredible insight and has a fascinating perspective on real estate and real estate development and personal investment. I'm sure you guys are going to be excited to hear from him today.
Thank you, David.
Okay, thank you, David. Can everyone hear me? Is this on? Okay, good. I'm going to introduce Tony Self while sitting here. Anthony is the co-founder of Hunter Mason Realty Group, a highly respected real estate firm that specializes in all aspects of the greater Los Angeles market, including real estate auctions, apartments, multi-tenant, single-tenant, net lease properties, mobile home parks, office buildings, and income properties. He's a licensed real estate auctioneer. Anthony has also provided top-notch representation to institutional buyers across the United States, successfully auctioning off 6,000 residential multifamily homes. He has an extensive experience in real estate industry and has worked at auctions.com, Hubzu, and served as an REO listing agent and auctioneer for multiple states. Tony has also authored and written real estate related books. So here's Tony Sock's self.
You know what I'm going to have David start us off with questions, but I realize I didn't, and I apologize, introduce myself or my co-host here, who I roped in to help me today. So my name is Angela Conterno. I am an agent that works in my family firm in San Pedro, Henry Falkenstein and Associates. My associate, Paul Falkenstein, is here with us today. Thanks, Paul, for showing up. I am a member of the commercial committee. I'm a co-chair of the commercial committee. And really our focus today and really for our committee is to have events like this and discussions with experts in our field, right? In commercial, whether it's multifamily, commercial sales, commercial leasing, retail leasing, I mean, industrial. There's so much out there, okay? I think as we as agents start our business, we start out getting our license and we think we're gonna sell a house or two, whatever. It's great, it's fun. But there's so many different specialties in real estate that you can explore. And this is just a wonderful way to introduce you all to really another world other than residential. Anyway, that's me. David Potter is on the screen. He is an agent at, sorry, David, like
King Harbor Realtor.
King Harbor Realtor. Okay, Realty. And then we have John Accardo, and he is also specializing in commercial multifamily sales and leasing, property management for his business or company, which is Compass. So that's us in a nutshell. We're going to have David start us off with the questions. So David, take it away. David Potter.
All right, this is just to kick off the meeting, and it's an open-ended question to all of our panelists, and I'm sure everyone in attendance would like to know, and I understand we do not have a crystal ball, but where do you guys see the general real estate market in the next 6 months to a year? And maybe we want to start off with Mr. Holstein.
I guess in the next 6 months to the next year, I mean, if I had the crystal ball, I would have a lot more money to know exactly what's going on. If you asked that question a year ago and said, where would we be today? And that's a good reflection as far as where we'll be a year from now. So a year ago, we were at 3.5% interest rates, and now we're at 6.25%. So a year ago, who would have guessed we were at 6.5% in such a short period of time? So the question, where will we be a year from now, it's ambiguous. Could we be at 8%? Could we be at 7%? Could it drop down to 5.75? And the relevance of the interest rate is creating the demand, because if you're buying, and we'll talk about cap rates, that's your rate of return. If you're buying at a rate of return that's 4.5 and your interest rates are 6, you're losing money the first day of your investment. So the question is, where are we going to be a year from now is really relevant to where's the market heading. And predictions, I think we're going to be a little bit more stabilized in the interest rates. But then if you asked me a year ago, would we be at 6? I would be wrong. I would sit on this panel and say we'll be 4.5 maybe. It wouldn't jump double. So a year from now, my prediction is we'll probably be around the same 6% interest rates, and inventory is, it's not a tremendous amount of commercial inventory out there. It is very tight, the market, but the buyer pool is definitely pulling back. So, that's something to be mindful of going into the commercial field. It's a difficult field because your inventory is light and your buyers are pulling back. So there's a lot of external pressures that are making sales a little more difficult.
Thanks, Dave. Tony, what's your opinion on this?
So just actually what you said is great from the buyer side. So one thing I encourage everyone to do is to watch economists speak. Yes, they are boring, but you will get this question. I just showed property this weekend, and the first question was very smart. There's multi-million-dollar properties, and it's like, how's the market? What is your assessment of what's going on? So absolutely agree. The rates have put kind of a doldrum, right? We've seen the market shift. The market shift back to regular market, which is what I love. I love this kind of market. It's regular. Now, what's interesting about what the economists have said, again, very boring people, but they have great information, so do watch them, is they said that on top of the interest rates going up, also we have a supply issue. Now, it's very simple, supply and demand, right? Who wants to sell their property if you have a 3% mortgage on it? That's what's causing a lot of the supply issues we see. And also in the commercial space, too, you got low interest rate. You're not going to sell your property or get rid of it unless you absolutely have to. So we're in this really weird kind of topsy-turvy area. It's like, okay, once rates maybe start to adjust, that might happen. If you only need to sell is where you're actually going to sell it. So we're seeing supply, especially in this area. Now, if you look at in the entire United States, every market is absolutely different. So this area itself, we're seeing it actually, there's a lack of supply. It's still, I would say, it's a seller's market still. It's happening. We're seeing multiple offers on properties we have listed, that type of thing. So that's one thing I encourage all of you to do is that economists are boring, yes, but do watch them because you will get this question when you talk to your clients. They're going to ask you about how's the market going.
Hey, thanks, Tony. Just by the way, for everyone out there, California Association of Realtors, which we're all members of, has two very interesting economists that really make the numbers kind of not boring. It's Oscar Way and Jordan Levine, and there's a lot of pre-recorded conversations they have on their website. So if you have a minute, check them out. They're always updating the economy, and they have some pretty interesting insight on what's about to happen. So finally, Sheri, what's your opinion on the future of the market?
Well, can you hear me? Yeah. This is probably the sixth cycle that I'm going through. My assessment is, as Tony said, the supply inventory is very low, so there isn't that much. But what happens, a lot of sellers don't want to sell. They think, well, things are going to come back to what it was last April or March, so it's not coming back. Interest rates have gone up. And so it takes a little while, about a year, my assessment, to adjust, sellers adjust to the new realities, buyers adjust to new realities, and then you will see activities. But meanwhile, the prices of the properties have gone down, and it's going to then stabilize. What happened the last 2 years, it was unbelievable. So my assessment, hang in there, things are going to turn around, and you can always make money going up or going down. That's my assessment.
Yeah, I agree. Real estate investment's always a good way to go. You can't get that hurt. So Angela, I'll turn it over to you, and then I'll chime in if you guys need additional questions. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, and I'll take this opportunity to remind everyone that we do want this to be interactive. So if you guys have any questions, we're going to open it up and let you ask some questions as well. I originally was thinking about Tony because I know he does dabble in property management, but I'll also direct it to David here because I found out he's quite an expert in property management. What are some of the telltale signs you look for as we've shifted in your tenants to manage and try to, see where a bad tenant is or how to get in front of that and limit your liability to a bad tenant?
So in multifamily, if you own property in LA, I tell everyone you have to be a member of the Apartment Owners Association. And it doesn't mean anything about the South Bay Realtors. It's a separate association for apartment ownership. And when you're a member of the Apartment Owners Association, I would say even if you're a realtor looking to be a broker specializing in selling apartments, you should be a member of the Apartment Owners Association. And it's a cheap membership. It's $60. They give you a monthly publication, and they do seminars just like this, but they'll teach you about the current laws and responsibilities of owners, how to manage your tenants, how to do the credit checks, what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. Some people don't know you're not allowed to discriminate against Section 8. Back in the day, we used to advertise, no Section 8. People didn't want to deal with a Section 8 government subsidized rent program. It was an option. We just put in our ads, no Section 8, we don't want to deal with them. Now it's illegal to do it. It's illegal. You get a discrimination lawsuit. So you know, talking about tenants, what you're going to do with tenants, the most important thing is to know what you can do and can't do in the qualification process. And then the next thing you have to know, if you made a mistake, what are the ramifications? What if you put a bad tenant in your building? How long will it take you to get them out? You know, it's an amazing story, but if you're ever going to sell multifamily, you got to know these answers. You got to know the histories. You got to be part of every bit of the associations for apartment owners and go to these seminars, because the rules change monthly, even weekly. You know, with the city, the county, even town municipality, they change their rules almost once or twice a month. It's not uncommon to see changes. Even on the 15th, there's another huge change relevant to thresholds, which most of you guys probably have no clue what thresholds are, but you won't be able to start a 3-day notice on your tenant that didn't pay rent until they're at least a month behind rent. At least, I mean, this is a new rule coming in on the 15th. They have other rules that you need to notify the city of which your tenant is late. As an affirmative defense, if you didn't notify the city, you can't file an eviction, and you can wait 3 months for your trial, and all of a sudden you have to start over.
That's LA City, right?
LA City.
Yeah, so different in your middle of
Right, right. So what we're talking about is you have so many different rules between LA City, LA County, Redondo Beach, Inglewood. Inglewood is what we call a non-incorporated city, but it's in LA County. So if you were selling real estate and you wanted to pick up a listing of a 6-unit in Gardena, you got to know that Gardena does have a rent control office, but they're not technically part of LA City rent control. But they do have an office that, as an owner in Gardena, I own buildings in Gardena, you have to notify them of a rent increase. There's a renter's bill of rights for the city of Gardena that when you do a rent increase, they have a right to complain to the city whether or not they agree with your rent increase. 90% of the brokers who ever sold properties probably don't even know it. Unless you own in the city, you wouldn't know it. But if you're going to sell units, you got to know the laws in the cities that apply to your building. And that's huge. LA City is the most onerous one. Some of you guys don't know, there haven't been allowable rent increases for over 4 years. 4 years. If you can imagine that, 4 years, no rent increases, and all your expenses are up 30, 40%. So, you know, when you go to the basics of the question, which is picking your tenant, you got to look at what city you're in, because you could be stuck with a tenant for 4 years, you can't evict them. And to qualify your tenants, you got to make sure that you're going the extra mile, because a tenant could really ruin your investment. And if you have a 4 or 5 unit and you have 2 tenants going bad and you got a loan at 60%, you lost your building. It's gone. You lost it. You're going into your home equity line in your house to feed your building. These are live stories. Elderly owners, they're suffering the most because they're the most generous. So you got to know the game. You got to be a member of associations. You got to follow the rules. You got to know if you're selling in these cities, you don't want to get sued for your E&O. You don't want to put in the disclosures, there's no rent control, and then they come up the next day like, you didn't tell us about this. So there's pitfalls, and it's all about knowledge. So we'll probably go into the theories of specialization. I specialize in investment properties. I own investment properties. I think that a lot of residential brokers are jumping into the field. A lot of the big agencies like the Marcus and Millichaps and the CB Richard Ellis, they used to monopolize the entire market of investment sales. The Keller Williams, the RE/MAX commercials, they're taking a giant market share. But you got to know the rules. That's the most important thing I could share with you.
Did David hear you? So real quick, so before I get going, it's actually going back in and out. How many here actually have done a lease? Okay. How many are doing property management? All right. Okay. And so the reason why I asked that is that what David's described, I've actually sold properties or we've submitted an offer, and I had to explain to the listing agent there's rent control in the state of California. And she didn't know that. She had a property, anything multi-unit, in the entire state of California there's rent control. And and I see it all the time, and it's really scary. And then you start to get into what David described. Then we also have Los Angeles County. If it's unincorporated, you got a whole nother thing going on as well. So you got different cities. Inglewood has, you have to register your property. It is mind-numbing how much you have to know. And it is so important that if you ever are considering doing leasing, doing property management, listing a rental income property, that you talk to your broker or an agent who understands this business. Because you will just, it is so much that goes on with that whole process. Not to scare you, but the amount of knowledge that you need to know is just mind-numbing. I also own income properties, and I would say dabble in property management. I get pulled into it, screaming and yelling. But I do it because my clients want it. I use it mostly as a listing tool. I tend to lease, list, and sell my properties. They call banking your listing. So I'm a big proponent of leasing. Love leasing. I think I'm at 113 so far in the MLS overall, and I've done a lot more after that. So you just have to make sure you understand. So when I bring tenants on, so what I learned, actually was Michelle Brown gave a great tip. I just put a lease on today, coming soon in Torrance. Beautiful property, $4,200, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, love it. Just if you got anybody, let me know. And I put in there rental criteria. Rental criteria stipulates this is how we actually, because you look at it from the tenant standpoint, they don't know how, because I hear it all the time. You have to empathize. One thing about being a property manager, working with tenants, everyone was there when you lease. They want your money. They want you to submit applications. They have no idea what's going on. So that's why I love rental criteria, because it stipulates this is their criteria, minimum credit score. Based upon that, all applicants over 18 will need to complete the rent spree. They are changing a little bit too, kind of going through the law about having some type you can like go into. You're probably more into it as well. But anyway, so the rental criteria is my biggest tip to make sure you get good, solid tenants. And then you should call the other landlord. Now, that landlord might lie to you. So you just gotta try to figure this stuff out, because sometimes you don't want, you ask very direct questions, you put in writing, that kind of thing. So for my tip, rental criteria is key. And then just following up and actually looking at things. Boy, do I have stories with people going like, why in the world are you moving from a $4 million place and want to rent a $3,000 home? And those are valid questions, and you ask those questions. And then you got owners who don't understand that it's against the law to not rent to families, or service animals, or the emotional support animals, which got a little bit better. But there's just so much that we're going back and forth. I've fired clients before because says, look, that's against the law. I cannot do that. You're done. So this is just kind of the whole thing. So you have to know a lot, and making sure that you have a resource or someone that you can talk to and trust. Doesn't have to be the same brokerage, just someone who knows it. Give David a call. You know, you have all the questions. John from property management, he's the guy. So ask him. He knows everything. I'm surprised you still have all your hair. So that's kind of where it goes.
You know, I'll just add to that, because I'm waiting for David Potter to jump in and say his technique, because he actually taught me a couple of techniques that he utilized. And it's interesting what everyone does to screen their tenants. And what David Potter did on one of his tenants is, you know, he goes into their social media profiles. He does Google searches. He does the LA Sheriff Office searches. He taught me a lot. You know, I was just doing credit, I checked their job, I maybe call a reference, but social media is sometimes your worst enemy. I mean, if you're posting on social media, you know, horrible things, and you go for an apartment rental and the landlord sees that, I mean, it could bite you. So social media as an apartment owner, to look for what this prospective tenant does on their spare time, it tells you a lot. So that was a trick from Potter, I'm surprised he didn't jump in yet on some of his, we should move it over to him actually if we could, but no. All right. Yeah.
Probably for you. So when you're working with
Let us bring you the mic real quick, so that it goes on the recording.
So when you're working with investors, okay, and they're kind of novice, so I always ask them, what's your appetite for the risk, right? Especially when you're working in LA County. I'm curious as to what's going on in the minds of the sellers of a number of these buildings when they're asking X amount for the property, and then when you look at the rent rolls and you're seeing 500, 500, 550, 700, 800, 1895. I mean, and then I talk with the agent, and I said, clearly one of these left voluntarily because you got your 1895. And the whole idea is that when your investor wants to buy a property, the chances of getting it delivered empty or anything. It's like slim to not at all right now because of LA County, right? And then when you ask about cash for keys, well, we couldn't do cash for keys for a number of years during COVID. It was illegal. Then he told me this one guy, well, maybe number 5, you might be able to buy them out for $45,000. I'm thinking, well, that's a new level for cash for keys. But I'm thinking, to talk to the, try and negotiate, well, I would look at how much to buy out all these people, and then you take it off the price or whatever. But there's so much involved here for a novice investor and even for an agent to investigate on these properties, like historical areas, and what can you do there? What do you recommend for someone like myself working with a new investor where they can become educated, other than myself educating them, how they could become more educated as well?
Well, I mean, that question has 1,000 answers to it. I mean, you hit rent rolls. What do you do with a 500, 1895? And you can't sell what we call pro forma. Pro forma is a magical crystal ball. Like in 5 years, everyone could be at 1895, and you're going to cash flow like a pig on this building. It's not going to happen, right? These tenants have rights. The $500 tenants, they have rights. They're not getting out. So, you could talk about buying them out strategy, but they have nowhere to go, and 45,000, I mean, that sounds like an insane number. I mean, the numbers used to be around 20, and it varies. If they're over 62, there's a different number for buying people out. If you're doing rehab, after COVID, you're allowed to do some rehab evictions for single family. But it's very difficult to get the people out. A lot of times when I'm selling buildings, people say, can you deliver it vacant? I'm like, no, I can't deliver vacant. Tenants have rights. It's a very, very common question. We'll buy the building list price. Can you deliver it vacant? No. I mean, you almost want to put it in the notes in the MLS. This property cannot be delivered vacant. Don't ask. But it's a common question. So when you're working with an investor, the key thing is don't overpromise. Don't sell them the 1895. In 5 years is going to be a cash flowing building. You got to just tell them the truth. You're in an industry where that's the rent. That's what you're buying. You're buying an investment that has a 2% return.
Yeah, I told him. I said the statistical odds of these people move out in the next 5 to 10 years is slim to not at all. And so so that they understand what they're dealing with. But it's interesting. They go through LoopNet and they find stuff and they send you stuff and you're like, okay, well, this is the real story on this property. And it's a little discouraging. Where would you recommend a novice investor looking for multifamily to begin investing? There's a straightforward one for you.
Well, the first thing I would do if I was a novice investor is I would study the rules in that particular city. So like we have LA City, they have their own set of rules. They're the most onerous, horrible set of rules for a landlord. So what city would be landlord friendly is your number one most important question. Because if you have a landlord friendly city, you're going to be able to operate your building with a little bit of promise in the future. But if you're in, say, LA City and you're restricted on rents and no fault evictions or even fault evictions, you can't get them out. I mean, you're in trouble. So the answer to your question is if I was with an investor and I was gearing them towards a city, say hypothetically Gardena, even though I said they have their own rent control office, they're lenient, they're tenant friendly. You could actually get, 10% as the maximum rent increase for the state of California. You could go to 10%, So certain cities you can't do much, certain cities you can. If you could work off 10% rent increases, you could make a happy investor your friend. Because that's a high return on your investment, 10% rent increases. So that's the answer to your question. If $500 increases, I recently sold, it was a 7-unit in San Pedro, but San Pedro is a rent control city, but if it was built in the 80s, it's not. So they could do 10% increases even in LA City.
Can I jump in real quick? Just so I disagree. Okay. All right. So I did sell a Lomita property, and we got all the tenants out. So it's possible. It happens all the time. So it's important, what I do agree with him, is based upon the city. So Los Angeles City is interesting. I have sold San Pedro properties. We're able to go to. What I'd recommend with my new clients, especially investors who want to be investors, you got to focus it. You got to tell them to start off small. And I try to get them something's vacant so they can at least have everything that's going. If it's not vacant, it's mostly for my sophisticated investors. Keep under 4 units because you get traditional type of financing because you're in the big stuff. So 5+ is completely different ball game. So most of you are going to deal with the triplexes, quads, and the duplexes. Again, if you go into everything is rent control plus 2 units, including that ADU as well. So it's rent control. And the state of California, the rent control as it is right now, if you owner occupy, blood relative, you can vacate the tenant to owner occupy the property. So it is possible. Now, the next question is how do you get the tenant out? And you got to get somebody who works with tenants and can help them. I vacated just last year through a triplex in Lomita. Got all the tenants out. It was a very interesting escrow, but we did it. And everyone was happy. So you can have it done. It depends on the city. LA City is a bit different. You can do it. They have a lot more control, a lot more restrictions on what they can do. St. Louis, Inglewood, same thing. But Torrance and other areas, I would say also Los Angeles County is worse than LA City, is my humble opinion. But go ahead.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to move on to Sheri, and I will say if you have a beginning investor, maybe they should focus on commercial property in terms of retail instead of residential. But I'm going to, yeah.
Yeah. So commercial property is totally different. There's no rent control other than whatever is going on with the general economy and federal and state laws. But usually it's all depends on the quality of the tenant. And the most coupon clipping type of investment usually is single tenant, like a Wendy's or McDonald's, Starbucks. They go by the cap rate. Cap rates are very important. And if you have a good national tenant, it will go nowadays around 3.5% cap rate, which is unheard of, but that's what they're getting. So with national tenants, so you know that you have a good situation. But even Amazon, so I was just reading this morning, Amazon Go, they're closing down their new stores that they just opened. And so do you know Amazon is behind it? No, not really, because they can, and so that's when you're leasing to a tenant of such, you have to be very careful what your terms and conditions are. What are they are just like commercial, especially retail leases are very, very complicated. And so you have to be very careful. That's when you set the rules and regulations for your future investment, because that lease is going to dictate what you have and how things are going to work.
Sheri, let me touch on the commercial lease for the crowd here. What's the longest lease you've ever been involved in? How many pages?
Oh, maybe 200 pages.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's a commercial lease.
that
Two
goes
attorneys
on.
on both sides of a table, work
Yes.
it out, it becomes very big. So it's not a car form, just so you know.
Yeah, it is totally different. So I usually start out with an LOI, letter of intent, if I'm representing the tenant. I'm usually a landlord's broker, so I receive LOIs, and then I respond to the LOIs. We won't go into a lease until the LOIs are finally finalized and cleared and signed by both parties. And then we go into leases, and then it goes to their attorneys, and then you just kiss it. It could take months. If you go, and usually those big, large tenants, national tenants, they have their own forms you have to follow. I've done a lot of Starbucks leases. They're like 60, 70, 80 pages, and they have all sorts of interesting things in their conditions, and some of them are exclusivity, so they have the exclusive. So which means if you have a Starbucks in a shopping center and they have exclusive uses for not selling coffee, tea, and all that, so as a result, you're stuck with that. So you can't bring new tenants that sell coffee. They can probably, and they specify that it's going to be Folgers, so it's okay. But if it's you know, anything, just name brand, you cannot sell. And so it just limits you, whom do you bring? And so those are the very detailed information that you have to provide your landlord. And landlords go, well, why can't we bring so? Well, you have made this lease with Starbucks, and now that's keeping me from bringing other tenants. So that's first thing I ask, let me read your lease. When they hire me to do a leasing assignment in a shopping center, I want to see all the leases. I review all of them and see what kind of exclusive clauses they have, what other use limitations they have imposed upon. Yes?
Sure. As a top broker, and you've been around, 6 markets, and your track record's outstanding. Share with us a little bit about selling in a down market, tough economy, how you're separating yourself from the competition, what you're doing to protect your clients. Because I know this is part of your success, and if you would explain and elaborate on it, I think it'd be helpful for.
Okay. So it's a good question. However, so what I do is instead of selling, I revert to leasing. Because in down economy, it's going to be hard to, especially when you're in escrow, and I have a situation now, and day by day interest rates are going up. And the buyer's calling me, well, my interest rates went up, so therefore I want discount on the price. So you're dealing with that kind of situation. So you try to be selective whom you're working with, and you try to bring in either SBA qualified buyers or all cash buyers. So those are the best for selling. For leasing, a lot of large companies, what they do, they use this kind of economy to move and expand their locations. So they go, let's say, if they have an inferior location, let's say McDonald's, and they want to go into a hard corner, signalized corner, they take that opportunity because the market is down, and they can go and negotiate themselves a real good deal. Or what I have seen also, so if you know the McDonald's at the corner of Western and Pacific Coast Highway, across the street they have the right, exclusive right, for not bringing another fast food.
Same owner?
No, a different owner. So McDonald's leased from them, they pay them I don't know how much per month. And because I was after selling that property to a fast food, to Burger King, and they said, no, you can't do it because McDonald's has already leased the space across the street from them. So, yeah.
Very smart.
So that's how they monopolize. So when also you see Walgreens very close to each other, well, they kind of, one of them is the loss leader of this location, so they use those to avoid other competitors to come in their market. Yeah, so then when they close it, then they have the sublease ability, and they control who comes in there. So there are all sorts of games that they play. So leasing is very interesting. In down market, that's what I usually end up doing, a lot of leasing. And there will be a lot of people moving around during downtime because they're taking advantage of lower rates.
Thank you, Sheri. I'm going to ask kind of a general question for everyone. When it comes to residential real estate, we're all members of boards and MLS, and we use that tool for our listings. Talk to the group here a little bit about what you subscribe to, what kind of services, and at what point in your career do you recommend investing in those tools versus just using something else, so to say. So
Well,
like LoopNet, CoStar.
So our company provides us with CoStar, and CoStar is very expensive to be a member of. So because that's where you'll find all the comps for multifamily, shopping centers, leases. They have a lot of services that they give you as a broker. So we have access to that. However, for LoopNet, you have to, it's their marketing arm.
Do you use it?
I use it a lot, yes. And a lot of general public knows about LoopNet. So first thing they do is they go, so to be, let's say I have listings and I just put it on CoStar, it goes automatically on CoStar, and every broker who is member of CoStar can see it. But for LoopNet, you have to pay more. So I have 6 or 7 silver spaces. So I put my listings as silver because you as general public, when you go in, you look at it, they will show up. If it's basic, it will not show up.
Do you put in the MLS?
I do put on an MLS, but I really don't get them. Unless it's a sale, I do get some response. Otherwise, I don't.
So CoStar is more like the MLS for commercial. It goes out to
Yes.
brokers and people subscribe to it. I know I've got an appraiser friend that's licensed in 3 or 4 states. I think he pays $4,000 a month for it.
Yes.
I have it through Compass, and I think I'm $400 a month. Do you know what your firm pays, or any idea?
I know it, thousands of dollars, and we just upgraded our membership to have national coverage, so we can go anywhere. And then CoStar has underwriting reports. So if I have a new listing coming up, I just go on there and I just pull that. It gives you all the detailed information about that property, competing leases, competing sales, what sold. I mean, it's just phenomenal. This
Great.
is something
And then,
I
so
really use.
LoopNet is more public-facing. You pay for the ads, but you get a lot of leads,
I
direct buyers and
definitely.
so forth.
And there are, with LoopNet, I can go in and see who, if it's a silver or higher gold or diamond, so I can see who has gone into my listings, how long they stayed there. So
LoopNet is very much like all your CRMs. So if they click on it, LoopNet provides all their contact information. So it's, again, you
yeah,
can
it's really
get
helpful.
emails and everything.
So our brokerage is still kind of a bit, the
Boutique?
owner just a few, 3-4 years ago started getting agents to work with him. So we don't specialize that much into commercial. But if we want to start, just keep our costs down. Say if I have one listing, he has one. Could we split it, like on CoStar under one company name?
Yeah, the company could, from what because our company headquarters, they buy it, but from what I understand, the company owns they are the members, and you can go in there. They have to give you the ability to go into it because you have its passwords, and yeah, so if the company pays for it, then the company can use it. We have one computer that it's a research computer, everybody. We have all sorts of other programs on it and apps, and then we can go there and do our research. For instance, the retail lease track, it is very essential in leasing. It's a phenomenal program and database that gives you all the national tenants, regional tenants, who is expanding, where they're moving to, if they're coming into California. So that's the ones I usually look at. And the size of their requirement, who is in charge, who is the site locator, because that's important to know. And then they also tell you what kind of demographics they want to be in, and the square footage. It's very phenomenal resource.
So if you have a 4-unit building, would that be classified as?
You mean
Residential.
Residential?
Okay.
I would go MLS for that one.
Now, some people do try to jam them into CoStar and so forth, but they don't get attention. You should put 4 units in MLS
Yeah,
and all your public
definitely.
stuff.
Definitely.
David, do you have any comments on databases?
So the database, it's kind of interesting. Sheri's with a national firm, and when you have a national firm, and I was with a national firm for 10 years, they have exclusive contracts with CoStar, and the agents, they pay for it indirectly through their commissions. They're on a different split. But when you're an independent and you want to join, and that's where I come in, and I have a membership, obviously, with the MLS. I have a membership with LoopNet and CoStar, and it does get pricey. It's about, like you said, $400 a month. LoopNet is a good source for inventory when you are representing a client looking for inventory. So if you're not a member of LoopNet, there's a premium listing, and then there's aged listings, and this is where you could get caught. So you're talking to a particular buyer, and he says, I got a call about this 10-unit building in San Pedro. How come you didn't tell me about it? Well, I didn't see it on LoopNet. I looked at the free subscriptions. Well, LoopNet, unless you're a member, you're not going to have access to it. So that's how they get you to join, is the access to the inventory. So it is somewhat important. If you're going to make that commitment to sell investment real estate, you have to pay the price and join. CoStar and LoopNet, they're owned by the same company. CoStar is a little bit more like for retail and leasing. It's useful to have. It's way more expensive. But LoopNet, there's a basic subscription that you could do on your own. It's a couple $100 a month. You could put your, she has the 6 silver. I have the 4 listing plan, and you have up to 4 listings that you could put on there. And I think it's a couple $100 a month. Or
It's simultaneous. You can put 4 listings at a time. After you sell one, you put another one in. So you're reserving listing quantities. Do you ever use Crexy?
no, I haven't used that one.
Okay. It's a local thing. How about you, Tony?
So bringing it down to pretty much the majority of you're going to do, if you want to do, we do a lot of rent analysis. So with my clients that currently have, you want to make sure they're getting top rents. So you're going to use rent survey softwares for that. So obviously, multiple listing service has a great service, but one thing you have to be aware of is the bandwidth, what the properties are. So if it's a certain price point, certain areas, the MLS doesn't work. They may use something else. Also, you got to worry about our friend Zillow. I hate Zillow, and I love them, which is kind of a weird type of deal. They don't, actually, all your listings, if you put a lease in the MLS, Zillow does not show it on their website. You have to go there and put it on there. Now, they're going to try to upsell you. You can do it for free, and I've done pretty well with the free option. And they have an amazing estimate tool. So a lot of for sale by owners will tend to go there. I avoid Craigslist like the plague. It's usually fraught with all those type of deals and whatnot. So whenever I do rent surveys, so the one I pay for is obviously the MLS, which all of you do. And then also there's a small website that I've used for years called Rentometer. Yeah, it's really super cool, quick, and it kind of fills in the spots in between Zillow and the MLS. So a lot of times when I do rent surveys for my clients, or if we're going to take a lease, I utilize those tools in order to do that. So when you do the commercial stuff, that's always been an issue. How do you price the leases on that? You use the CoStar stuff, or?
I use CoStar, and then also I use CoStar, and also I keep a database for myself, and I know a lot of brokers, they don't put the numbers in there. Like you see go on LoopNet, it says to be determined or call the broker. So I know the brokers, I call them, and they tell me. Otherwise, they won't tell you.
So I also heard that LoopNet is where commercial properties go to die. Is that true?
No, I get a lot of activities from LoopNet because I put it on
Because
silver.
it's broker and broker typically commercial, then anything they can't sell themselves, then they put on LoopNet, and it's just like they don't care.
No.
Is that different? No. Well, this is what I hear. See, I'm just,
No, that's-
I'm just trying to find out from the experts.
For apartments, I think it is. From what I understand, like Marcus and Millichap, they put it, they don't put it until they offer it to their own clients. But I don't know. I mean, if it's a hot market, you try to double edge it and.
I was going to say, there's no clear cooperation in commercial. So you can take a listing and just put it in LoopNet and try to find the buyer and double end it. MLS, we don't do that. That's a big difference.
Yeah, commercial is the wild, wild west, just to let you know.
So I'll just add, because I was 10 years with Marcus and Millichap, so I could give you some feedback on how cooperation works. The MLS, you have to be an agent and you have to have a broker to be on the MLS. And if you're a Marcus and Millichap agent, you're in nowhere's land, because Marcus Millichap is not a member of the MLS. An individual agent has to be the member of the MLS, and he himself has to be a broker to be on the MLS. So a lot of times you'll never see a Marcus and Millichap listing for Marcus and Millichap alone. You would just see the Holstein group, Marcus and Millichap agent. So that's kind of an interesting theory, is where is old Marcus and Millichap's inventory? Well, their only resource is LoopNet. That's LoopNet and CoStar together. So in today's day and age, we're not selling things as fast as we did a year ago. Agents aren't double-ending deals like they used to. They're not selling with 3 offers on the first week, unless they're priced incredibly low. But, with sellers asking for high prices, you need to cooperate. And that's where you guys do have an opportunity. That's where today's a great day for you guys, because these agents are not selling them like they used to with a strong market with 3% interest rates and 5 offers. So they're going to need your help. You're going to need to look at the inventory and try and sell it. So it is an opportunity.
Let me dovetail off that and ask you this then. MLS, you have a rate, you know what you're going to get paid. How does it work if I talk to a Marcus and Millichap? Do I just say, hey, what are you going to pay me?
Well, you're right. The MLS and LoopNet, they do have, if you were a member of LoopNet, it's the same thing as the MLS where they show a 2% or 2.5%. Is it always that sometimes I see them do 1% and they're making 3%. They get away with it. There is no MLS goddess in the sky that's going to punish you. They could do whatever they want. It is the wild, wild west. I mean, they could reward you 1% and convince their seller why they should. And that's standard. They do it.
So what's your advice? Just if you're going to make an offer, have a commission agreement go with it?
Make the commission in the offer. It's very easy. You just put in the offer, in the addendum, 2.5 or paid to this agent. And then it's really conflict of interest. Now, the question is, would the agent, recommend your offer if he knows that he can't get a higher spiff on it? But in this market, it's changing. We got to emphasize, things are not, we're transitioning out of an extremely hot market with amazing interest rates to an area where that agent needs your offer.
And so it is an open dialogue. You do, if you're engaging with a commercial person, you need to kind of set that expectation is the best way, because you do talk to them like, hey, I'm going to get paid this, and it doesn't get paid to you. If you're not a broker, you've got to name your broker to get paid. It's the same as MLS, so that's a good.
But don't be a pig about it. If you're writing on a $2 million deal and say, I'm demanding minimum 3%, and this guy has a 4% total fee, try and be reasonable. Even if you're at 2%, but you're on 90% splits of Remax, the average Marcus Millichap guy is on 50-50 splits. So it's just interesting to think why they feel entitled is because they're giving such a huge amount of their commissions to the house.
I want to tie in a question to this discussion. As agents that aren't as familiar with the commercial world and the leases, the lease agreements and or the purchase agreements are so involved, right? And you've got, and I'm sure all 3 of you have had offers come in from a new agent that maybe doesn't know what they're doing, or maybe is putting an offer on a rent control property and isn't even advising their clients properly. Not that that's your job to train them or educate them, but if you want a deal to go through, what are you guys doing to help, a newer agent maybe, make this deal work? Sheri, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I usually, when I get a call or get an LOI from a residential broker, and I know they're not familiar with the terms and the forms and all that, so I usually give a brief, information session, and kind of when they bring the LOI and going like, if you're asking for 5 months free rent and you're bringing in a 3-year lease, it's not going to happen. So kind of go easy on that, because I want your deal to go through. I usually like to do, I don't like to do the double-ended deals. I like to represent the owner, because it's a lot easier for me, so I can do more listings. So I try to help them. And or let's say you do 5-year lease and 5 months free rent. Well, do 5 years. Don't say the lease term is 5 years. Do it 5 years and 5 months, because then you have 5 years net. Then you get paid on the 5 years, not the 5 years and 5 months, because if you don't include that additional 5 months, so you're getting paid on 4 years and 6 months, 7 months. So it's kind of, you just try to show them around, and I usually do that. Try to help.
One thing that the reason why real estate works is that you'll have someone who's experienced, typically a listing agent, because usually your seller is going to go with someone who's experienced. It's very uncommon to get someone. It does happen though, the friends and family kind of thing, which is amazing. But normally, when I get a client coming in, and I know that, and this is just for regular real estate, and if they don't understand or have issues, we try to help guide them as much as we can. When we have multiple offer situation, I will look at that and I will advise my clients, okay, this particular agent has no idea what the hell they're doing, and this particular seller, doesn't know, versus this one, which I try to find out. It's like, do they own income property? Do they understand it? Because it's amazing. Again, we're in rental income, and they want us to deliver it all vacant. They said, yeah, anything's possible, but you have to realize this is what needs to happen. It's not a guarantee, and nor don't put in your offer because we're not going to accept it that way. Yeah, it's a possibility. But so that kind of happens all the time. Now with leases, because I don't let the agents do the leases for me, I draft it. And then I send it to them. So it's a really easy transaction with me. I do all the paperwork because I want to make sure it's done properly and everything's in there the way it should be. Send it to the agent for review, give us any comments, and I'll make the edits on my side and just send it off all for signature. So that's kind of how I approach it. So we do guide, but again, I'm there working for my client, and if I know I have two offers on the table, and one is an income owner, understands how income properties work, versus one is brand new, we're going to side with the one, and again, price-wise and that kind of thing, but that's usually how we approach it. Yes?
I just wanted to share that for a lot of people like myself who are newer in the commercial space, if you work for a smaller brokerage, there's more flexibility on the points. And so you can beat out a big box, broker, which is what we did on a transaction of it's a family property, big family, multiple owners, and they had an apartment complex on the west side, and the bigger box people came in and they wanted 4% or 4.5%, 5%, I think, and then we said we'll do it for 2%. They just fell off. They said, well, we can't do it because the splits were so they weren't going to make anything on it. So we were able to beat them out. And so the point is that I think a lot of times people who are in a smaller brokerage, commercial brokerage, or do commercial leasing or sales, I should say, feel intimidated by bigger entities, but we shouldn't be. Because we can compete.
One thing I'd caution you on is don't devalue what you offer and bring to the table. So when a client hires me, they're hiring all of this knowledge in my head. And I can navigate them through transaction to conclusion, and then some afterwards when you do 1031 exchange, whatever their options are going to do. So there's a lot of value that I bring to the table when I do go there.
Yeah, this involved a nefarious cousin on the side of our people who was digging stuff on
Don't try to match stories. I got great stories.
The point is we knew what we were up against, so we had to come in. And it was to the benefit of the larger
understand.
You're right, though.
Yeah, one thing I just caution my agents in general, because we also have about 30 agents that work for us, and Hannah's in the back. Hello, Hannah. You just want to make sure you don't devalue what you do. I mean, you as professionals go through all this time and effort to do what you do. Now, sometimes you may need to, and the thing is, don't get away for free right away. You may need to, like in the back of your mind, you may need to do that with the deal just to make it happen. I wouldn't put it right out front. But just, again, you're professionals. I mean, on this, we got a lot of time and effort. You guys have amazing information, right? So our clients appreciate it. And some of the clients will even pay more. I've had that happen quite a bit. It's crazy. But that's what it is. So, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but just, again, I just want to caution you, just don't devalue what you do, because you're all professionals.
To go along with that, maybe we can talk about this, but what are your biggest talking points when trying to negotiate your commission?
All right, so fee is a big issue. To discount your fee to earn the listing is usually, it could bite yourself in the butt. They're going to say, okay, the market's 5, but they're willing to work for 2. It's not that they're looking for that 3-point savings. They're really looking, what are you going to do for me to get this property sold? What are you going to do to increase the probability of the sale being successful? That's what your seller wants to hear. Your seller wants to hear that you're going to get this through the finish line. You're going to do it without getting me sued. You're going to get all these disclosures done. You're going to meet the appraiser out there. You're going to service the heck out of me. You're going to answer my phone calls when I call in the first ring. You're not going to punt me to your assistant and let me wondering what the deal status is. So your most important thing that you could offer your client is service. And that's what they want. They don't want a 3% discount. They want service. They want to know that their property is being exposed. They want to know that the broker they're hiring is there, is present, is answering their phone, is a member to all these subscriptions. Their property's going to get out there. They're cooperating with another broker. They're meeting clients at the property. They're representing the property in the best light. That's what they want. That's always what they wanted. Every client I had for 30 years, that's all they ever wanted was representation. And that's what you got to give them. And you don't have to be in a big house to give them all that laundry list of items. You don't. You could easily email every broker in every big house real estate brokerage company, and they'll have access to that inventory in one blast email. That's all they need to know. It will get out there. But what you're going to do for the client is what matters.
Hi, I'm Katrina Matthews with KW. I've been lucky enough to be able to show some of Sheri's leases this year and work in a little bit of the commercial space. So what I've noticed is that a lot of the cities coming out of COVID have started to change and putting their input into certain commercial leases, like the city of Lomita, if anybody wants to speak on that, and what's going on with, I think it's Narbonne Avenue, and some of the restrictions that city has put in. I think Angela could probably speak on the Hill, and Tony, of course, here in the Beach Cities area. What have you guys have seen as far as what the spirit of these kind of inputs from the local cities in regards to commercial leases, what they're trying to do, what they're trying to keep out, what they're trying to bring in after COVID, if anyone can speak on that?
Hey,
Well,
Sheri, just before we get started, it's all about housing, from my perspective. Right now, a lot of cities are pro-residential housing. So I
Exactly.
know Lomita has a very big push to convert commercial to a mixed use. So every city is different, but I think most of them are looking at residential housing.
That's correct. Torrance is the same way. Redondo Beach, they all are looking for additional, because the state has mandated and portioned out that each city, like in Torrance, they have to come up with 8,000 units by 2025. So how do you create that many units? So the famous thing is happening is on Hawthorne Boulevard. Hawthorne Boulevard has an overlay. It's a C5 zoning, but then they also have an overlay. And within those overlays, they had so many restrictions as to what could go in certain zones, like in Meadow Park area versus Del Amo versus. So what they're doing is they're kind of easing off the density. So if in the old days for multifamily, they were allowing 27 units per acre, now they're open to do more than 70 units or 80 units per acre. So you have to make the case to them. So, but they're open. So I think because of housing, they have eased off on. And then also Torrance has changed their parking requirement for commercial leases or users. So they used to have 5 parking requirement per 1,000 square feet of building. Now they changed it to 4 per 1,000. So which means you can do more leases or bring more tenants, because those tenants are going to be selling retail and they're creating the sales tax for the city. So they realize that they need to bring more people of such nature. So their medical was 5 per 1,000, now it's 4. Redondo Beach, they're easing off on their medical also. They used to be really restrictive, now they're changing it. So my advice is when you're going into different cities, find out what their zonings are and study them before, to see where you can.
This goes back to, like David said, you need to know the asset and the city and what you can and can't do, whether it be tenant rental laws, the city zoning rules. And the city zoning rules take a couple years to change. So it's easy to go to the city halls and find out what their plan is. RPV has just started the process that their entire commercial corridor on Western, the RPV side, is getting converted to mixed use, all commercial. Now, they just started that process and input from the public, and you can go onto their websites and ask to be informed. And that's what I do. Like Beverly Hills, I read every Beverly Hills City Council meeting. It's amazing how much money they spend on attorneys.
Also be careful, Lawndale. They do an inspection before sale, so if you have any type of outdoor washer and dryer, it will stop your sale. I have personal experience with this. Took months.
Lawndale are very difficult to deal.
So playing devil's advocate for the consumer, if density and housing is the real issue with these cities, the question is, how do you have a density and housing issue when, for example, if you look at the city of Hawthorne, and we have a lot of old stock sitting there, Redondo Beach on their west side also has all stock. City of Hawthorne has a mall that has been sitting empty for the past decade or so, and I understand that the owner's a real jerk. However, how do we have a city who says they want to push this mixed use into the city while having things like the Hawthorne Mall? So what is it? Is it, do we need density and or we want to get away from that and need housing? Or are we letting owners like the owner of the Hawthorne Mall sit and just kind of drag his feet? So which one is it? I'm not understanding how the cities are getting away with this.
Let me remind everyone, commercial business is governed by the California Business Code. So if it's legal to do in the state, you do it in commercial real estate. So to answer your question about the Hawthorne Mall, it's privately owned. They can't do anything with it. They can fine him every day, but that's all they can do. They can't make him do anything. He's trying to sell the property for like $250 million, and people that sit down and hear that number laugh and walk out of the room. So you can't do anything about it. The city has a mandate, they have to provide housing. They just have to chalk that off as that's not a solution and look to other means. There's also some new stuff that's still untested called developer or builder's remedy, which allows the state, it's in effect now, if a city like Torrance, I believe Torrance has qualified, so they're not out of compliance with the state. But the city of Lomita, I think, is short just a few units. Like, I think they need just a couple hundred more units in their plan. But if they're out of compliance, a builder can now go straight to the state and get a permit to build anything anywhere. And the local city, according to the state, can't stop them. Now that's happening right now. A big project in Santa Monica, a builder did that. Santa Monica residents and the city council said, no, you can't. He broke ground. He's moving forward. So with the lawyers fighting, that's starting to happen, and we don't know what's going to happen. It'll probably be answered in courts. So to answer your question, we're on the very verge of all of this, and so you've got to be astute and a student of the city and commercial real estate to play.
They give incentives. The cities, they can do incentives, give you incentives to go and convert and do mixed use. In my opinion, the mixed use projects where they put 4,000 or 5,000 square feet of ground level leases, retail spaces, they're almost impossible to rent because I've had several of those, and they're very difficult to lease because who goes in like 4,000 square feet? Because it takes more than just that. So as a result, what happens is I can bring a coffee shop or I can do some food user, but they can't have ventilation because you have 3-4 stories above you. So what I tell people who are developing mixed use, make sure you have ventilation accounted for from ground floor all the way to the rooftop. Then you'll have the ability to lease the space. Because people usually, foods are the ones that will go in a place like that. So anyway.
Wow, right? Okay, I'm going to turn the page here. Let's go back to some basics. I am curious, what process or system do you all use to keep in touch with your clients and maintain that Rolodex, your database? What are you doing?
I have a rule every Monday. I the people that I have listings with, I usually have 10 to 15 listings on the book, so I get in touch with them and let them know. I call them up. I do not just email or text message. I call them. I'm a little old-fashioned and talk to them, let them know what I've done the previous week, and this is what's going on. And if I haven't, meanwhile, done so, that way, because I feel like I'm a property owner and I have used brokers to help me lease space, and I don't hear from them, I'm very nervous about it. So that's why I call my clients and let them know that I'm here. And then I stay in touch with my old clients. They always come back. So right now I'm having a lot of repeat business. So that's what I do.
I mean, that's, keeping, if you're in a business for 20 years, you could have thousands of clients. So, to keep track of all of them and keep them present is almost impossible. So we used to use different database softwares back in the day. If you remember the days of the Palm Pilot and the days of REA was another software program, and then there was ACT, and then so there, you remember those? Yeah, it puts some age on you when you start throwing those out there. So now, believe it or not, I'm not taking on as many clients as I used to. I used to do, back in the day, 30 sales a year was a lot, and I used to do that many. Now I'm probably closer to doing half of that or a quarter of that. So something for me, what I do, and I think the most important thing, which we didn't discuss, is really specializing. Like if you decide you want to get into commercial real estate, you could see from this panel, I mean, it's tremendous, the size. You could do leasing, you could do sales, you could do commercial, you could do industrial, you could do apartments. So the key, in my opinion, if I was to give any advice to you guys, is to specialize in one thing. Pick something. Like you want to specialize in 1 to 4 units and reposition. Like we were against each other saying like, oh no, you can't move 20 tenants, 1, 2, 3, but a fourplex you can. So you could specialize in a certain field and be knowledgeable about certain cities, and you'll be far more successful. So if you specialize, you would know the 20 key clients that would buy a building today. And those 20 key clients are what you want to be in front of. Those are the ones that you want to contact daily, weekly. And something as easy as your iPhone. I put the notes in my iPhone contact. So if someone called me up and they said, I want 10 to 20 units, I would just put a little note next to their contact name, 10 to 20 units, Hawthorne, right? So you're not going to remember all these guys' names. After a year, you're going to have 100 inquiries, but you could just go to your iPhone and do a search for 10 unit, 20 unit Hawthorne, and all of a sudden these guys are right there. So the cheapest contact program is your iPhone. It really is. It works for me. It's just to put those notes in your phone because the search engine in your iPhone will bring it right up to you. Well, iCloud, yeah. So even that, and back in the day, I mean, now you're putting some age on you because back in the day, if you lose your database, you're done. I mean, you're done. And we all lost our databases. You lose your phone, it's in the cloud. You're fine. No, you could lose your phone these days. In the old days, you lost your phone, you lost your Palm Pilot, you lose everything. You're just gone. But now we all have, hopefully, backup every night our iPhones. And if we lose our iPhone, it's all there.
I'm telling you, David's ancient. Man, you're called Palm Pilot. Everyone, who knows what a Palm Pilot is? Look at that. Only maybe 2 people. Oh yeah, actually, it's in my technology drawer of all the stuff I've had.
I just bought one on eBay. I do. It's in my car, and I do once in a while break it out and bring it to a meeting and pretend that I'm still using it. It is in my car right now, a Palm Pilot, and it's the biggest gag gift is to show up at a restaurant and just break it out with the stylus and pretend that I'm still using this thing.
That's awesome. That's great. So just to let you know, so our market has shifted. So what's happening right now, and I've been hearing about agents just bemoaning, it's like, oh, I can't do anything, business is bad, blah, blah, blah. But they don't have a good database. Your database, the first thing we tell our agents as they join us, your database is number one. You got to get it out there. Get it off your phone. Get it into an actual CRM, contact management system, kind of the ancient ACT. ACT doesn't exist anymore, by the way. Don't even try using it. So there's a number of different types of services. Your brokerage usually will offer a good, solid contact management system for you. You have it in addition to the phone. Also, you can pay for it too. So we use, because we have a team that we do a number of sales. My lovely wife and partner Courtney's in the front there filming me. So we use, because we have multiple people on our team, we use Follow Up Boss. It's expensive, but it works amazing. We can tag people, text them, email them, drip campaign. Connects to all of our different types of social media, connects to our websites. So that is on steroids, and it was a very painful process to get that going. However, you need to have your clients in a database, and then doing the very simple thing of actually talking to them. I see a lot of young people, and I can say this because I'm old now. I'm almost 55 plus, so I can get into that to the 55 plus area. Yeah, I know, ARP. Just talking to people on the phone is actually huge. Texting doesn't work. I'm sure you have some clients that are kind of mean texters. I have some, and also tenants like that are mean texters. I just talk to them on the phone. They're just sweet as anything, but they're mean texters. So, don't go with texting all the time. Don't try to do email all the time. Actually, having a cup of coffee, phone is even good too. Just talking to your clients, going through your whole database will change your business, and being consistent about it. That's what you got to do.
What was the name of that?
FUB, follow-up boss. Follow-up boss, yeah.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Let's get our computer screen to talk.
Oh.
Hey, David, do you have any questions?
He's still there. I have no questions. I want to throw in a few things. I think Tony mentioned Zillow, and I know Zillow is like the evil word, but I do a lot of property management, on the hill with houses, or, let's say you're renting something above $3,000. I get a lot of good leads from Zillow, and, before, when you input on the MLS, your listing would go automatically to Zillow, but now you have to do it manually. One of the really good things about Zillow, usually they're not represented by an agent, so you don't have to pay out that additional commission if you're the listing agent, or you get both sides of the commission. And I kind of find that some of the Zillow clients are, in a way, pre-qualified. They're way better than like getting them off Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. That's one thing I like. And the other thing I was going to mention, you guys were talking about following up with your farm and stuff. I've never really worked a farm. I've never knocked on the door. Mine's all been through property management. And early on, we kind of talked about the horrors of property management and how difficult it is. If you could take on a couple of units and kind of get familiar with it and understand the laws, it's a great way to get leads. And so you get leads for life, and you get people who sell property and buy property. It's one of the best lead generators you can have. And I'm sure like Sheri, Dave, and Tony can all attest to that.
Yeah, thank you, David. Sheri mentioned that earlier. In a down market, she goes to leasing. And I think it's to David's point, there are a lot of qualified tenants shopping on Zillow. And normally they don't get any love from realtors who don't like doing leases. There's no money in it. But it is a good lead source. So it's I think, a good point, both commercially and residentially. That's LoopNet's business model. And Zillow is, of course, the big gorilla that has everyone looking for property.
Okay, I'm going to turn it back around to some property management. I noticed recently that CAR has really been promoting property management training lately, just in the last 3 to 6 months. And I think it's because the market's shifting, right? And they're encouraging agents to either become more informed, but they're really pushing a lot of the classes, become a property manager. Obviously, with being a property manager and actually maintaining a trust account, it's very risky, and that's when you get audited, and if you're not doing it properly, so there's really a lot of risks. But my question to you guys, I guess, not so much Sheri, but yeah, she's like, no. If an agent, and quite a few hands did raise up when they said they were managing properties, so for somebody wanting to get into it, what would you say are a good skill set to have and knowledge base to start out sort of in that realm? And where would you tell them to really be aware of, like going forward?
Probably the worst person to ask about property management, because I manage my own properties. So I'm prejudiced about property management because I know what goes into being successful in just managing my own properties, and why haven't I given that to another property management company to do for me? And I call property management a thankless business, and I've never taken other people's management business for a reason. I refer it out. When the management is going good, everything's quiet. People are getting their commission checks, their cash flow checks. But when things go bad, when the market changes and vacancies are taking longer to fill, or you're trying to get higher rent and it's not moving, or evictions take longer to go out, it's all the manager's fault. The manager gets blamed. The owner's like, how come we're not where we were 6 months ago? So management's a tough business. The theory of management today, it's way different, and the panelists will agree, is your disclosures are tenfold. Even from your COVID era, it's still transitioned to today. What you have to disclose, you get signed by the tenants. Everything from bed bug addendums. I mean, a lot of this is defaulted on the MLS. You could go into the lease and look at all your disclosures, and there's hundreds. My lease now, it's funny because we were talking about the commercial lease, a residential lease could be as much as 90 pages right now. 90 pages for residential lease. It used to be 4 pages. Double-sided, 4 pages. Now it's 90 pages with all the disclosures that you have to do. So if I was going into management as a newbie, I would say be careful. It's so onerous as far as what you need to do with all these disclosures, and what you need to do to qualify the tenants, and what you need to do to get around all the rental restrictions. So it's tough. I would say these management companies, they're earning their keep. If a management company demanded 6% and a client calls me up and says, is that too much? I used to tell them you could get it at 4, but now I'm saying pay the 6 if it's a good management company. So if you could find a good management company that you can refer your clients to and focus on sales, to me that's a win. But if you want to be in the management company business, you got to be attentive. That's the number one most important thing.
Yes, so this is an interesting question. First of all, you got to make sure your broker allows it. A lot of brokers will not allow you to do property management because of all the liability and what's involved. If you're thinking about having an interesting environment, I also own my own properties, and I do a few. Not a lot, a few. And only because they want me to, and they won't go with anybody else. I try to talk them out of it. The first thing I do, I say, look, you do not need management, especially if it's on a single. Yeah, I'll be there. I'll assist you. We have the vendors. We can just point in the right direction. But some want me to do full. You have reporting, monthly reports. If you look at the property management agreement, as now a rental property owner, very involved. So there's a lot of requirements that you have to do. Sometimes you can have it send the payment to the owner. So if you want to get involved in this, it is, especially if you're your own property, you own income property, you're going to learn this no matter what. That's how I got into it. Just like you. I own my own properties in Old Torrance. We own the 50-unit mobile home park in Tucson, which was wonderful and horrible at the same time. So I'm really good at QuickBooks. So I also have an MBA. So I took a lot of these business classes, actually paid off. So all my accounting classes actually worked out. So I understand accounting very, very well. I know how to read spreadsheets. You got to read. Most people don't understand how to read financial reports. And you have to sit down with your clients, okay, this is how it works. This is your balance sheet, accounts receivable, and you have to understand that. Now, that's just one piece of it. The other piece is working with tenants. And you have to have a certain discipline that you have to be empathetic, and you will get very dumb questions. And you have to say, okay, I'm going to take a step back, and maybe there's just something going on that they don't understand. Or it just, they want you to jump through hoops. You deal with a lot of different personalities, very sometimes aggressive personalities, depending upon the price point. For me, I got rid of the mobile home park because I didn't want to deal with low-end tenants. Very, very lucrative, but I just didn't want to deal with all the drama, too much drama. So a lot of times I'm going to look at my properties, properties on the hill, completely different than if I go on properties a little further up into like Inglewood. I have different types of tenants I have to deal with, and I get different types of questions. So you have to understand that you're almost like a psychologist to the nth degree. So you have to be empathetic, understand how to work with tenants, and really, and then you have to have all the other stuff along with it, understand all the disclosures, all the reports, everything else. But it's something to do. It's just a lot harder than a lot of people tell you. So what CAR is pushing, just like when you got your real estate license, they told you, yeah, you got a real estate license, you can make $100,000 a year. Was that true from the state? No, there's a lot more to real estate. You're an independent contractor, a 100% commission salesperson. So kind of the same thing with property management. There's a lot to it.
So I'm with a smaller brokerage in the South Bay in Hermosa. one of my clients, she's got properties in Miracle Mount. I couldn't drive all the time to manage it. So she ended up giving it to a management company. But somebody mentioned the other day that management company has a real estate license. So when she's ready to sell, doesn't that put me at risk? That
Yes.
she's used?
Yes.
Yes.
So that management company has a relationship with the client. If they're smart, they're going to list with them and sell.
So is there sort of an agreement you can sign in that case?
No.
That they
Yeah,
manage it, but no, you don't.
Let me touch on property management for a moment also. Your residential lease has a paragraph in that lease contract that says your duties as a realtor end as soon as the lease is signed. So you don't have to do anything else as a realtor. There's a reason for that. Mainly in property management, it's been touched on, you're a dual agent. You're getting someone from Zillow, you're representing them as a tenant, you're their tenant representative, but your first fiduciary responsibility is to the owner that you have the property management agreement with. Total conflict. So I would say, based on what CAR is doing and promoting property management, they've probably been bought, and there's property management company software that's buying sponsorship, and you're seeing a lot of it because it's very attractive right now. You need to diversify. I would advise, like it was said, go to your broker and say, I've heard about property management, what do you think? And do it politely because they're probably not going to want you to do it. It's all different insurance and liability. And so it's all about the contracts. And like David said, all the disclosures. And right now you can't evict people in certain cities. And that all becomes your liability as the property manager. So to answer your question too about how do you protect yourself, get a listing agreement signed. See if the MLS will accept it with no dates on it. They won't. But that's the only way you can protect yourself. So in my property management business, almost every one of my properties I sell. Or if I don't sell, I have a referral agreement to someone that does sell it for me.
So I got some of the, it's 4 buildings she owns. So I got them rented out now. But the last building, the last unit, was becoming too much for me to drive. Then I tried to negotiate a higher rate because we started at 4%. So I said, can we do 5%? So she thought I didn't want to manage it or rent it out anymore. So she got a management company. But now I'm kind of, I need to get it back. So do I sign, you sign the agreement?
You need to call that owner and have a conversation. That's the best thing. They probably don't have an agreement with the property manager, but when they decide to sell it, the property manager knows everything that's been done on the property. They have all the disclosures already. The seller doesn't have to do anything. So the property manager is the proper person. They're going to be communicating with the tenants and showing buyers and all that stuff. But if you have a chance at it, call the owner. Don't text them. Make an appointment. Call them. I want to talk to you about this property and see what value you can bring to them and try to win the business.
Basically try to manage it for them instead.
To that point, though, there are some property management companies that do not also sell properties. They strictly do property management.
And how can you check that up?
Well, you should Google that property management company or ask your
You can look up and see if they've done transactions in the MLS.
Right.
Or anyplace else.
Okay, so we're kind of at the tail end here. We have 15 more minutes, and I would like to, well, we already have.
I want to ask.
Oh, we want to ask
Sheri
Sheri.
one quick question. The queen of Hawthorne Boulevard.
Okay. Try me.
I left Best Buy last night at 8 p.m. and I
Uh-huh.
swear I had to put gas in the car to cross the intersection. Why is Hawthorne and PCH so massive right now?
My husband and I drive through there, and he goes, somehow this whole intersection got a lot larger than it used to be. I think part of it, they enlarged, they took land away from Raju's building, then the other side. So they created a second, the right turn pockets all around. Also, they used to have a median there, and it was black or different color. Now there's no median, and it's all very light color, and it makes it look larger. I think that's part of it too.
Do you have any reason, or is it just state infrastructure, you think? Could it be for the units they're going to build up off of Belmonte?
No, I think what it is, Hawthorne Boulevard and Pacific Coast Highway are not under City of Torrance's jurisdiction. They're Caltrans. So they
That's-
dictate. So
See what
whatever.
an expert can tell you? Little thing like that, it's a state highway, it's not governed by the local city.
Exactly.
And that's
And
probably why.
Try to do, put a curb cut on one of your buildings that is on Hawthorne Boulevard, you have to go through Caltrans, and it takes forever.
Well, and I know what Sheri's talking about by the U-Haul there, that was eminent domain. They did take that property. So you guys have all heard that term in real estate. They still do it.
But U-Haul is still there.
Yeah, they just took the retail.
They took the retail, yes, that was through eminent domain. That was City of Torrance, so I guess in cooperation with the state.
Yeah, and we could go on forever. We are going to open it up to the audience, so we'll keep Annabelle busy here to run around. And yeah, she's trying to get everybody on a mic because we're going to record.
I know this is difficult with commercial because all these experts have amazing stories, but try, if you can, to make specific questions because we love to talk.
Hi. Can you hear me? By the way, Chair, it's an honor to meet you finally after all these years. So it's such a pleasure listening to you, and you have so much wealth of information and wisdom. Having said, regarding leasing and negotiating leases, if you can talk to us about when you are negotiating triple net leases or gross leases, and you have those rent increases, do you tie to which index? Do you do the LIBOR index, or do you use the Wall Street Journal index, or just if you can just make comments, generally speaking, on which indices do you connect to your
Okay.
leases?
In the old days, we used to use CPI, and there was this really complicated formula that you use. You take the denominator. So what it created a lot of problems and a lot of lawsuits. So a lot of people dropped that. So now what they do is fixed. I mean, that's what I recommend to my client. And if, let's say, it's a long-term lease, national tenants, they will not do annual increases. They will not. You have to keep that in mind. So theirs is every 5 years, they give you a 10%, at the most 15% bump. And then when you go into their options, also it's all pre-negotiated. So that's the national. For regular mom and pop type of leases, you have to think about the tenant, how much business they're going to do. If you burden them with 7, 8%, 6%, CPI is 6, 7%, whatever it is, they're not going to make it. So a lot of landlords would rather have a good tenant in place. So they go from 3%, 4%, used to be 2.5%. So anywhere between 2.5% to 5% increases. I do not connect to any or base on any index.
Yeah. That's my experience. It's, generally speaking, I tell my clients to just make it very basic and like a flat rate as well.
It's easier, you get paid on the increases, so you know what commission you're going to get. So that makes a difference too. Yes.
So for the commercial transactions, so they don't put the commission rate on the LoopNet or CoStar, so we don't know how much they're getting. So when I represent my buyers, before I submit an offer, I ask the listing agent how much is a commission, and then later, because they say we don't know how much they're getting for total, so they say usually like 2%, 3%. But later we found out like they're getting like 7%. So I'm just wondering, in order to make it clear, is it okay to request a copy of a listing agreement?
You can. I have done it before. However, they, they won't do it. I don't know if that's legal or not. But I mean, if I have the the situation with some brokers, and they request it, I give them a copy. I took the names and the dates out. I give it because I'm not hiding anything. But I have seen situations where they keep 3-4% and they give me 1%.
Right.
I will not agree to it. So what I do is I put it in the LOI that I want 3% commission.
Got it.
So then I have to negotiate from that. And now the seller knows that I have a qualified buyer. Do you think they're going to walk away from my deal and entertain a higher commission for their brokers? No, they usually, I've done it many times and it's successful. So you get them when, you have a listing, you have a purchase agreement or an LOI.
Okay, second question. So, the CoStar and LoopNet, they're very expensive. So I'm just wondering, like MLS, if we put a listing on a MLS, it goes to Zillow, Redfin automatically. But what about the commercial properties? If we add any commercial properties, is there any other website that goes into like you just mentioned, cracksy.com? Does it link with the MLS?
As far as I know, no. None of the commercial databases pull from MLS data.
Yeah, I try to find out if there's any alternative way, better way, because it looks like a CoStar and LoopNet try to monopolizing the market, commercial market.
They are.
Yeah, so they're purchasing, they're getting all the money, and then they're purchasing apartments.com and everything for the commercial side. So if there's any like alternative way we can utilize more actively,
Anybody want to answer that?
I mean, we all said it, they monopolized the market. So on both sides of the equation, as an agent, either if you're representing a buyer, the buyer's going to want to know, what do you have for me? And if you don't show them something in that target market area and someone else shows them something, not only do you lose credibility, but you lost the client. They're going to say, well, why didn't he show me this? So, it's an investment. If you're going to, and again, I went back to the specialization. You got to specialize, focus, get all the tools to make yourself successful and make yourself stand out, brand yourself in that area. That was for the buy side. If you're a list side and you only have the MLS to broadcast it, it's not awful. I mean, the MLS is a big audience, but if you start going into the 20 to 50 unit realm, the LoopNet will bring you a larger audience. So if you're a list side agent and you ask me, is the MLS sufficient for a 6 unit or a 4 unit? I would say it's sufficient. It is. You'll get all your comps for a 4 to 6 or 8 unit on the MLS. But when you start going to 10, 20, 30 units, you just got to pay the price. And, they monopolize it. It is what it is. But it's a trivial investment if you're doing $2 million deals or $1.5 million on a 8 unit.
Yeah, I'll comment a little bit. I am on the area Compass real estate team. We have about 9 agents. I'm the only one that do commercial. So if any of those other agents have an opportunity that's commercial, they just give it to me. And we work out a referral agreement. So, because they don't have the tools and they don't have the language, and their buyer, I sit down and talk to their buyer, and they're normally newer, less experienced investors, and they, like Tony said, value what's in my head. And I know how to play the game, know how to get it marketed, and know how to sell. And not every asset and every buyer or seller has the same motivation. So it's again, like we've said, commercial is very different. There's not many rules. It's just who can get the job done. And we're entering that market where things aren't selling themselves. And so leasing is a good way to learn the business, learn the local market. David mentioned specialization. My comment to your question is simply from the spirit of partnering or referring with a commercial agent that's been doing it. And when I was at Keller Williams, if you gave me a referral, I'll pay you 30%. If you want to be involved, I'll pay you 10%, because I'm going to spend a lot of time teaching you stuff, and I don't have time, because time is everyone's. That's another thing with commercial that's really different than residential. Residential is home, emotions, and you buy a house. Commercial is normally about the numbers and time. And the wealthier a person is, the less time they have. So they want a good agent that's going to cover them A to Z, and so that their time's not wasted. So with that, I also want to segue into the commercial committee that put this event on today, and that we are always actively looking for people that want to participate. So please keep that in mind. You don't have to have experience. And just by dedicating a couple hours a month, you can listen to us and talk to us and learn quite a bit about commercial just by, spending the time and investing the time. And you really need to be a student for each specialized city and asset type. So, Annabelle, any more questions?
No, but I do have Mr. Ted Atala. Sorry, you didn't have a question.
Hi, I manage the South Bay office, and I work with Sheri, who is a principal of the company as well. She's one of the owners of the Capital. We've got 14 offices. I want to congratulate Sheri, but I don't think this group knows. She just received the LA Business Journal Gold Award for the largest medical transaction, and it was here in Torrance. So congratulations, Sheri.
And Sylvia has a question. Sorry, Sylvia, I forgot.
Sylvia Mendez, Realty One Group, Hermosa. I just wanted to address the question about presenting your commission request when you submit or when you have an interested party for a property. First and foremost, the game that's different in commercial is that you have to propose it. You're not, I haven't, and maybe I should, like Sheri says, but I haven't ever asked for a listing agreement. Usually I just propose, and then you find out whether they're going to honor that or not. But you always, first communication is always propose. Don't overlook the commission, because if you overlook it, so will they, and you won't get paid. That's number one. But number two, also regarding Crexy, CoStar is front and center always, and even though they're the name, the only name in commercial, so is the MLS. Truly, they're the only game in town for residential. So same thing with commercial. It's CoStar. But Crexy is a close second, and they try harder, so sometimes I go with them as well.
Thank you, Sylvia. And then one last question.
I actually have two questions. One is about the listing. I do have a listing right now, and it's the number of the cap rate that had got creamed by other agent a lot of times, because this building have 0% vacancy with the wait list. So when I do the financial calculation, I calculate the current cap rate with that. And I said, no, this is not true, this is a wrong number. And then also very low maintenance. And like all of these boil down to like the cap rate looks higher. And another problem is my seller would not want to sell at a lower price, but he is in the area he can increase 10% in rent, and that's probably going to happen between May and June. Should I just let the property sit until it's meet like 5.5 probably cap rate with that price? He happy to sell, but the property list longer. Or should I just encourage him to sell it at a lower price because his cap right now is not going to meet the price he wants?
So cap rate is, obviously, if some people don't know, it's the rate of return on the property. And it's an ambiguous number because expenses vary from operators. And how big of a property is that one?
Mixed use, 36 apartment, and then the whole first floor retail, nearly 10,000 square foot. So it's like
Okay, so
in that 8 million.
So that one's, it's a larger property. It's going to require management companies. It's got to management fees. It's got to require reserves for your roof and structure. It's going to require so much in underwriting. Even for a lender to look at it, they're going to have their own expectation of expenses to underwrite the property. So even though you have no vacancies now, vacancy is not just vacancies. It's actually called collection losses. And you have to budget that some of your tenants aren't going to pay. You have to budget that in that variable in your annual expenses. So you have no vacancies now, and it's likely in a tight market that you won't have that many vacancies, but it's highly likely you'll have some losses in collection. Some people lose their jobs, so you got to budget that. You got to at least put a couple of % in there because it's a realistic expense. Your insurance, your labor, your management fees, all that stuff has to get underwritten. But as far as to answer your question about income, if you got a 10% rent increase coming in the next 2 to 3 months, just build it in and just note it a pro forma, expect it at closing. So don't delay the listing because you're waiting for that rent increase to take effect. Put the rent increase in there, but disclose it. Disclose it's coming. It's not there yet, pro forma, that everyone does it.
It's already listed, but it's no one interested. So I'm adjusting the number right now because it's a lot of it. And my seller, this is his first apartment building. He managed it on his own. That's why expense so low and no reserve whatsoever. It's actually just put it out from foreclosure because passing the pandemic, his other business in trouble.
The biggest problem, and I had to overcome it many, many times, is when a seller manages their own property, they're going to manage it without management fees. They're going to have their own vendors do the maintenance. So they can manage it 15% less than what, 50, but you also got property taxes getting readjusted. So there's so many variables. Insurance is up. We got an insurance guy here. I mean, insurance is up 25% in a year. So, that's why people aren't jumping to buy in this market. They know these expenses are there. So you just have to inform your seller that these expenses are there. I mean, the prices are reduced a little because the expenses are out of control. You can't cash flow.
Yeah. You know what? We are all challenged every day with the things like this, aren't we? I just want to end this discussion because seriously, we could stay here all day. Really, it was a pleasure to meet. I mean, I know Tony, I've never met you, David and Sheri. Really a pleasure. It is an honor to be in your presence, all of you. No, seriously, you guys have a lot of experience and so much knowledge and expertise. I hope you all got out of it what I did.
The panelists aren't paid, so let's give them
let's give them all a round of applause. Seriously, we're very grateful. So I am going to wrap it up. I want to say thank you very much. Thank you all for showing up. We hope you got something out of this. I'm sure you did. And come back again. We are going to get some photos before you leave. Yeah. And if you're interested in being a part of the commercial committee, just contact